Right. So, what we are discussing today about the advanced level microservices, because in the latter stages we discussed about microservices architecture in reference to the components at the same time design patterns. Right. So, all that was discussed in the earlier session. Now, in context to the advanced level understanding over the microservices and all everything. So advanced level microservices normally will be implemented using authentication and authorization framework, which normally we call it as OAUTH. Okay, right. So let me write down here. If you want, you can make a note out of it.
Okay.
Right. So when it comes to advanced level microservices is concerned, advanced level microservices is concerned. So whatever the kind of the framework or the process, what is that we usually called as? Usually we call it as a framework, like as the regular frameworks we are implementing application level and as well as that in reference to the advanced level microservices when we are implementing. OAuth is what something one of the prominent framework which normally we use in this. Now, when it comes to the OAuth is nothing but authentication and authorization framework, which is called, you can write down,
Yeah.
Aishwarya, you can write
Okay.
authentication and authorization framework normally, right? So this is what generally OAuth stands for. Majorly, whenever we are trying to implement OAuth framework, especially in microservices and all, which majorly enable us to understand as a third-party application whenever we are using it, because especially whenever we want to log into the third-party application and all that, how we have to implement this automatically. At the same time, we need to understand because login to third-party applications using different login credentials, either it can be of LinkedIn, right? So, or it can be any social networking websites, whatever the credentials we are using and all. Normally, here in this context, generally OAuth is a kind of framework which majorly delegates the user authentication process and all everything to the kind of login credentials, whatever that are we going to use in implementation perspective. Let's say, for example, we are using Facebook or Facebook or LinkedIn and all everything, right? So we are using it on all. So normally there must be a framework which normally we are creating, which is called OAuth. Majorly, this is the one which majorly focusing on delegating the user authentication process and all everything for these third-party applications, so that whatever the automatic login process we wants to generate and all everything that will be authorized, especially by the third-party applications. All that. This is where generally for that whatever the integration are we going to do, right? So using different login credentials and all everything. Login credentials and all everything, so we can access the other sites also, right? So this is where generally OAuth framework is the one which majorly delegates all the user authentication process and all everything in the context of microservices. So the major advantage under OAuth, right? So through this OAuth and all, what is that we can do? Whatever the applications uh, we are trying to access, right? So either it can be in applications, whatever we are using, either it can be social media applications like Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn and all that. So whatever the applications we are accessing and all, usually these applications will have some limited access to us in order to enable this as an implementation level, wherein OAuth is a kind of login process which majorly useful to us to understand and as well as implementing directly into the login application directly to the social networking website. So this is where generally we normally use this framework and all that. But when it comes to the microservices part, because as we all know, whatever the microservices we are creating, all the microservices are loosely coupled. So different components, we use multiple microservices and all. So whenever there are different smaller services are we going to develop and all, there must be some common ID, which is something required, right? So we need to have a common ID number, especially for user identity purpose and all everything is what something we will be using. In that regard, whatever the common ID number are we going to generate, common identity number are we going to generate, the ID number and all everything. So that authorization process as well as authentication authorization of the customer common ID, whichever are we using in every stage of the services, whatever we uses throughout the application, wherever that common ID number we are using in multiple services, the same one. So OAuth is a kind of framework which majorly authenticate and authorize that common ID in different user identities when we are creating and all everything in regular intervals. But when it comes to the roles of OAuth itself is concerned, usually we classify these OAuth roles into 4 different parts. Let me explain it to you. So OAuth roles as follows. OAuth roles as follows, right? So that's OAuth rules as follows. There are 4 different rules, especially in reference to the OAuth. Usually OAuth 2.0 is what generally the version we are using. So OAuth 2.0 rules are as follows. Yeah, rules are as follows. The first one will be called as resource owner. You can write down.
Yeah, I'm writing down.
Yeah, right. So one is about resource owner. Second was authorization server. Second was authorization server. The third one is called resource server. And fourth one is called client application. Okay. So these are the 4 different roles which normally we use here. Right? Let me explain you that. Yeah, right. So here you can see there are 4 different roles will be there, especially. So you can see, let me highlight here. Right. So whenever we are working on both in reference to the 2.2 implementation and all, so there are 4 different roles we have. The first one is about resource owner. This is what generally one of the role which normally will be there. So apart from resource owner and all that, so we have another role of resource owner as well. At the same time, authorization servers and all that. At the same time, even there is a resource services, resource servers, at the same time, client applications, right? So all these things are different roles, which normally we will be using in OAuth, right? So majorly it was. But majorly when we want to understand about the first one, right? So when you're trying to understand about resource owner, you can write down resource owner. You can write down, it's better. Resource owner is the role. Resource owner is the role, which majorly delegates
Which majorly delegates
authority for third party applications third party applications to use the resources on behalf of the resource owner. On behalf of the resource owner. Comma continuation. But BUT resource owner may not be resource owner may not be resource owner may not be same as end user, the one who uses the application. In this case,
Yeah, in this case.
In reference to the microservices implementation,
Yes.
Microservices application, microservices implementation, microservice implementation, resource owners. Resource owners protect the resources in microservices. The resources in microservices. At the same time,
protect the resources in the microservices.
At the same time, end user protects the website.
End user protects the website.
So because there are two, one is about either it can be resource owner, at the same time user, right? So because sometimes resource owner as well as the user may not be the same, because there may be some third-party applications we may be using where we are delegating this authorization process and all on the behalf of the user. This authentication authorization process can be handled. So when we are trying to implement whenever we are trying to implement this OAuth 2.0 framework, majorly one of the prominent role which normally we use is called resource owner. This resource owners act as a delegating authority, on behalf of the user sometimes. May not, because sometimes it may be same, sometimes it may not be the same. So in these third-party applications, whatever the resources management and all everything is what something will be done majorly by the resource owner. Now, in reference to the implementation of resource owners and resource owner itself is concerned, generally, whenever we are implementing this authorization services and all, there are some processes which we have to be followed. Yeah, right on. Authorization process. Authorization process. Authorization process. Issue. ISSU. Issue.
Yeah.
Issue access tokens to the client application.
Is it like authorization server issue?
Authorization issue server I'm talking about. Authorization server issue.
Okay.
Issues tokens to the client application. Once authentication authorization from the source owner. an authorization from the resource owner completed successfully. Completed.
Once authentication and authorization from resource owner.
Must complete successfully. Then on this authorization issue to access tokens and all to the client application. Because if you want to issue a token, issue an access token from the authorization server, normally what it is required is that whoever the resource owner and all, resource owner has to complete authentication authorization successful. Then only this authorization server will issue a
It is
token.
like step 2. Once
Absolutely.
it is successful, then only
Yes.
it will.
Then only, yes. Point subject to condition is that resource owner has to authenticate and authorize this. Okay, so once that is done, then only whatever the access token released by the operation server and all everything will happen to the application. Otherwise, it won't happen. Right. So that's what it is.
Okay.
In this regard, continuation. In this regard, resource server. Resource server.
Yeah.
Validates access token. Validates access token.
Yes.
To protect the resources. To protect the resources. To protect the resources. Hence, authorization and resource server. Authorization and resource server. Both together. Both together. Referred as. Both together will be referred as OAUTH provider.
Okay.
Understood, right?
Yes.
Right. So normally when we are working on the first one, which is called the role which is called resource owner. Resource owner is a kind of role which normally we use here because resource owner or resource server, whatever they have to validate and validate the access tokens and all everything for the benefit of the protecting resources and all that. So in this regard, whatever the resource owner and as well as resource server as well as authorization server and all. So both together will be, usually we call it as OAUTH provider, right? So this is where generally the first role in reference to the resource owner is what something we'll be using under the OAUTH framework. Understood? Clear? Aishwarya?
Yes.
Clear or not? Right? Understand? Clear?
Yes.
Is it clear?
Yes. Yes.
Right. So this is the first role. Whenever we are working on this microservices, whenever there is a usage of OAUTH framework we are using, this is what one of the key and prominent thing which we have to mention with. Because resource servers and all everything has to validate and access the tokens, but make sure whoever the user, so that they have to the resource owner and all everything, resource owner has to authenticate and authorize. Then only this authorization server will issue token and all to the client application is what something we have to be known with, right? So this is the first element and first point which we have to be focused more. Okay. Second one about client registration. Second, we call it as client registration. So that I'm going to discuss tomorrow, right? So authorization, second, client registration.
Okay.
At the same time, next we need to discuss about OAUTH protocols, right? So there is a OAUTH protocol flow which normally people that we are going to discuss from tomorrow. I'll do it from tomorrow. Okay. Clear, Aishwarya? Understood?
Yes. Yes.